how long were you in that iceberg?
I don't know, a few days maybe?
I think it was more like 100 years.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Anime Boom, and I am back for another video in Avatar: The Last Airbender. We all love the show, and one of the biggest hooks of the show, one of the biggest shocks of the show is Aang being told by Katara that I think that you were in an iceberg for 100 years, and Aang was shocked by this. He really was like, whoa, 100 years. I really was in an iceberg for 100 years. And I've been thinking about it. Being in an iceberg for 100 years on Avatar: The Last Airbender really doesn't matter. It does not matter. It took me a minute to figure this out, but it really doesn't matter. So in the scene, Aang is shocked by it. He ain't really shocked, but he is shocked by it. And I think they might have did that for a reason. Like, man, that's a big deal, but it kind of isn't a big deal. In the real world, most people don't live to see 100 years old. You live a long time, like 70, 80, 90 years old, but 100 is not, I guess, common with people. But, it's possible. You can live to 100, 110, 120 years old sometimes. That's the highest we can go. We don't do 140, 130 and stuff. But in the Avatar world, they blow us out of the water. It's a whole different thing. Now, in the real world, I think turtles, have the highest living rate or whatever. They could live 100, 200, 300, I think maybe even 500 years. Turtles live a long time. So they're way closer to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And they might actually even succeed Avatar: The Last Airbender. But in the Avatar: The Last Airbender world, most people live after 100 years. Most people live to see 100 years old. Really, all of them get to see 100 years old, unless you get killed off or whatever. And Kyoshi, for example. Kyoshi was the Avatar, and they say she lived to see 275 years. Maybe it was 375. I forget, but it for sure was 275 or over. That's, they say that. Roku lived to see 80, 90 years old. Monk Gyatso was around with Avatar Roku and lived to see Avatar Aang. And that was Avatar Roku as a teenager. And they went all the way, he lived all the way to see Aang as a teenager. And that's just crazy, man. Boomy. Aang thought all his friends was gone, and then 100 years later, his best friend Boomy that lived in the Earth Kingdom, 100 years later, Boomy is still alive, 100 years old, and probably 112 years old. That's crazy to me. And there are other characters too. There's other characters like Katara. Probably is 100 years old. Katara might be 100 years old, because at the end of the show, she was 17 years old. And if you add Aang's life and Sokka's life, that's 60 years. And then you add Korra's life or whatever. It's close to 100 years is my point. Toph, about the same. A little younger than Katara, so she's not 100 years all the way, but she's getting to 100 years old. And these people still bend and do all types of stuff. Zuko got into a fight scene in Korra. Toph can still do all her bending stuff. Boomy was incredible in Avatar: The Last Airbender. He used to throw hands. And age was never really brought up by these characters. It just seemed like they didn't see age as anything. Katara might have something going on, but she never brings it up. It just seems like she kind of retired from all that action and stuff. Where somebody could say, maybe I'm wrong, it's if they reveal it. If Sokka died from old age. They have not told us yet. Sokka's death. If Sokka died from old age, then look, at least you got one person. But that could be a murder. And I'm most likely going to say it's somebody killed him, because That's just not common. Most people just don't die from anything. Don't just die from old age on Avatar. That's not a common thing. So, yeah, that's how I feel about it. I guess Aang kind of did, but Aang still lived to see 175 years. He lived for 175 years. If 175 years, if you include the iceberg years with it. So Aang would have been lived to see like 170 years of his life. So that's how I feel about it, though. It's not really that big of a deal. Aang doesn't make it seem like that big of a deal, and I think you should start looking at it that way too. What the thing that really confuses people think the 100 years deals with the Airbender genocide. The Airbender genocide is what really people need to start looking at. The Airbender genocide is when Fire Lord Sozin used Sozin's comet to kill all the firebenders and stuff, and Aang was not around to stop it. And people put the iceberg 100 year stuff with the genocide and stuff, but really the genocide's a whole just a murder. He killed a lot of those airbenders and they didn't get to see Aang. If that never happened, hot take, Monkey Ato would still be alive. He would still be alive and be around Aang and stuff. Those kids Aang was playing with 100 years ago would still be around with Aang and stuff. And that's what would happen to me. The genocide is what people really need to start being mad at, not the 100 years in the iceberg, because that really doesn't do anything. We could think of other characters. That's why I'm ready for the sequel to Korra, because we're going to see Mako, Bolin, Asami. We're going to see if they can live to see 100 years. And if those characters get to see 100 years, if most characters get to see 100 years, then I think I'm 100% right. 100 years in the Avatar world does not matter. And yeah, man, that's just crazy, man. Most shows do not do this. Most shows have characters age to a point where, okay, they're gonna die soon. Like they can't live that long. In Naruto, for example, only a few characters can live, that long. It's rare in that show. So I think that's cool though. It's unique. I think it's a cool thing to add on to that universe. Like age is really not that big of a deal. The Kyoshi age thing is very interesting. How she lived that long. I think she used like bending to actually make her last a long time. She used bending, like our blood and stuff, to keep her body healthy. You can use bending to heal your body or whatever like that. The water bending, healing from like one of those North Pole, South Pole. I forget, but there are things they introduced in the show that could help you live a long life. The spirit world is another thing that they use to make living, I guess, easier or whatever. So the spirit world, adding the spirit world onto it is also a whole nother thing, because Iroh is still alive. Iroh lived. He lived in, I think that's because they wanted to bring back the voice actor, but Iroh lived to see Korra and stuff, the next Avatar and stuff. So that also makes it not that big of a deal. I think Roku was in the spirit world, Zhao was in the spirit world, and they don't age up. Zhao was still the same exact age he was, I guess, during Avatar The Last Airbender and stuff. So just tell me how y'all feel about it. Do you think Aang being in the iceberg for 100 years is that big of a deal? Do you think that is the reason, that 100 years was the reason he couldn't save his people from the genocide or whatever? Or do you agree with me that the 100 years really isn't a big plot point to the show, and they shouldn't really mention that all the time? Him being the last airbender is because of the genocide, not because of the 100 years. And I'll see you on the next video. Anime Boom out. Peace.